Hi, everyone. This is COVID back with another episode of Beyond the Code by Typo. Today, with us, we have a special guest who is a passionate, insightful thought leader. He has 18 plus years of experience in software engineering and leadership. He's currently VP engineering at Tide, and he joined the company as early as like the 25th employee in the company. He loves to discuss about technology, building and scaling teams. And post COVID, you can find him at a lot of events talking about his thoughts. He has been to DevOps Enterprise Summit in London, then he has to be SaaStr, and then there was VR Developers in Berlin. And now you can find him in the upcoming events at CTO Craft on 7th and 8th of November in London, talking about culture at scale. And then he would be at Lead Dev Berlin 4th, 5th of December, talking about native to Flutter transition. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, Giorgos.
Hi, COVID. Nice to see you here. How are you?
I am really well. Thanks for being on the show. We are really grateful.
My pleasure.
All right, Giorgos. So we have this format of having a quick fireside chat with our guests. Okay.
Sure.
And here we are going to know a little bit about you, your personal life. And you have to be like honest. Okay. All
Will do.
set? All
Do.
right.
Try my
All
best.
right. Perfect. So I'm starting off the first question. I'm sure you're reading a lot, but which is your favorite read, favorite latest read, and what is your learning from there?
So, okay. Reading is tricky. First of all, I'll have to say that I have a very short attention span, so I can be very easily distracted. So for me, reading is a struggle. But I try to push myself and I try to read a lot.
Okay.
Having said that, I have a big pile of books here, which I haven't read yet. My latest one, which I actually finished, is Never Split a Difference, which is talking
Oh,
about negotiation. It's actually a really nice book. I just finished it last week. Really, really good book. I think it's probably in everyone's top 10 or 20 must read books. Really good book about negotiation. And I
okay.
just started, I'm not going to advertise it. I'm not going to, because I don't want to it, but just started like reading Empowered by Marty Kagan, which I'm a big fan of from the Silicon Valley product group. So
Yeah.
he has a
Yes.
series of book. I'm just reading now Empowered, which is obviously talking about empowering product teams, product engineering teams.
That's
Um,
nice.
yeah. And I also like to read novels. And the latest one I read, I can look at it here because I just put it down like a few weeks ago. The Good Fairies of New York, which is actually a really nice book talking about two fairies traveling to New York. No surprise there. But it's actually
That's
quite fun.
such a diverse taste, I must say.
Yeah. It's actually
Perfect. I
quite
think
fun.
it's nice.
Yeah. But I have to say, I'm also using a Blinkist a lot. So
Okay.
I
You listen audiobooks.
listen, yeah, I'll read both. I can do both. But usually I do like 2 or 3 books like on every other day while I run.
Got it.
So that helps me
That's
get
nice.
the summary. And then if I like the book, like it happened with Never Split Difference, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to read it.
Oh, that's nice. And that's a quick, like really nice advice. Like quickly have a summary of a book and then probably go back to
Time
reading
is
it if you want.
precious, right? Time is
Yeah.
precious. You need to optimize. You need to filter out the ones you want.
Right. Right. Perfect. That was a nice advice. Nice books too. All right. Next question. I would love to hear like what's your favorite way to unwind?
Okay, so I like cinema. In my previous life, I did study cinema, like it was cinematographer. So I have a passion for cinema and movies by extension. So naturally, you can find me like watching movies or TV series on. I have all the possible subscriptions like Netflix, Apple TV, like Amazon Prime, all of them. I try to limit it obviously because I don't want to binge watch movies like three,
Yeah,
4 hours,
it's really
right?
nice. Yeah.
Again, time is precious, so we need to optimize that. But that's my preferred option to unwind, like watching movies or music. Obviously, music is I listen to music all day long. And recently, and obviously playing with my son is a big thing. How
Oh,
this is
is it?
unwind, or he winds me up, or I unwind down. Depends on how it goes. But recently, I bought a guitar because I like to start playing the guitar together with him, who has been playing for 1.5 year. So
That's
that's
really nice. That's really sweet, man.
yeah, electric guitar, by the way. I'm going straight to the Fully.
That's absolutely great. I think like you have such diverse tastes, you're reading, you're playing electric guitar with your son. I'm already inspired. So what's your mantra for success in life?
Um, okay, so there's two sides of it. The one mantra of success is looking outwards, and I'm talking outwards is like what I let people see, right? And for the people that like they work with me or they live with me, my mantra is like I try to be authentic. Whenever with my work relationship, personal relationship, I try to be as authentic as possible. I don't try to pretend that I'm something that I'm not. I'm very direct, like in a polite way, though, respectful way. And I
Yeah,
like,
that's very important actually,
yeah,
being
I
polite
like,
when you're done.
I like treating people equally. But again, like by being respectful is at the top. One of the red lines that I have, especially when I hire people, I keep telling them when I interview people, is I don't like disrespect. Like, I have zero tolerance for disrespect from any direction, right? It can be me sometimes that I disrespect somebody else. I need to be put on my place if I do that because sometimes we
Yeah.
do mistakes, right? Things happen. So when you cross a line, you need to be told to actually to step back and apologize, right? That happens sometimes. But for me, this is very important. Respectful and authentic, like being authentic. And on the inwards, the way I approach my life, like my personal, which sometimes is outwards as well, but it's not my mantra. But inwards is actually continuously improve. Like that's my mantra. When I wake up in the morning, I'm actually thinking what I'm going to improve today. And I actually am a big fan of Kaizen from the Toyota manufacturing philosophy.
Certain, yeah.
Small continuous improvements, obviously, hence the Blinkist, hence why I go running every day, hence why I do like small exercise every day. All this is part of my mantra. Like, this is how I live my life, my philosophy.
So I think one good thing is I noticed you follow what you preach, right? Like if
That's right.
sometimes, yeah. So sometimes if you disrespect somebody, you are okay that if somebody comes and tell you that you were wrong here and you have to be put
Oh,
in the
yeah.
right place. Yeah.
It's very hard for people who report to you to actually believe
You
you.
do that. Yeah.
But, I try to walk the walk, like, and I prove it to them. Like, I'm very down to earth. I don't have any, I have ego, like everybody else, but it's not hierarchical ego.
Yeah. Got it. Perfect. It was good knowing you because I think the audience knows you now. Now, the main section. We would love to know your experiences. You joined Tide at a very early stage as the ninth engineer in the team, 25th employee in the company, and now the
Mm.
team is almost 500 odd developers, right? So this experience, I'm sure, has been amazing for you. There would have been definitely many challenges. Share something about those challenges. How did you overcome those?
So diet is a constant challenge, but it's a positive challenge. First, I'll start with something else. I like challenges. I like challenging myself. So
Okay.
when I will talk about challenges, it's not something that we suffered, right? This is always like a challenge comes with a positive outcome, always. So, but I'll tell you about me. So I joined Tide, yes, very early in April 2017. I was the ninth engineer, 25th employee, very early employee, part of the original gang, actually. I'm number four now. There's another, no, most people left by now.
Oh, okay.
Um, and but now we have 1,500 people. Out of the 1,500, roughly 500 are engineers, or in engineering in general.
Yep. Got it.
And obviously, I played a key part in transitioning from that number to what we have now, because I was very early here. It was a constant challenge because in the beginning, we didn't have the resources that we have now, but we have the appetite. Then we have a small team which we collaborated really well. Then this team started scaling. With there was an overhead of communication, so it was a constant challenge at every level because not only we scaled really really fast. So if you look at I'm working on a presentation now, and I created like a graph, and actually the graph is exponential, like
Hockey
the
stick.
numbers. So it is a hockey stick, really close to hockey stick, yes. Um, So that brings a lot of challenge. And for a company that went from basically no processes, no tools, you know, going to what we are now, like, you can imagine
Yeah, yeah, of course.
the pain of it. But it was very rewarding because we learned a lot from the process.
Tell us one of those things which you found really challenging.
So, okay, hiring, I'd say probably hiring is the biggest challenge because we scaled. really fast. So hiring and onboarding all these people,
Yeah, of
and in
course.
some cases it was actually 4 times in a year, like quadruple in a year. Bringing all these people, it was very challenging. And it's very challenging. Why? Because we also wanted to keep our culture, like the
Right.
culture that we had when I joined Tide, and which was really people centric and really about our members. We wanted to keep it and maintain it, and we actually managed to do that even now. Like maybe obviously it's slightly different. It's not, obviously they have different skin to it, but actually at the core it's the same. And that was probably the biggest challenge that I've seen at Tide, like how to keep that culture intact.
So when you go out and you have this pressure of hiring, let's say 100 developers in next, let's say 8 months or 10 months time frame, how do you ensure, how did you make sure that you get the right fit for the company? Let's just tell us some nitty gritty, like how other people could learn.
So first of all, let's start with some base stuff that you need, right? You'll have some prerequisites. You need to have an understanding between the team that is hiring that nothing's going to go perfect. Like you will hire people who are not a good culture fit, and you cannot avoid that, especially if you're hiring fast. But what you need to do is, as you hire fast, then you also need to be very lean on actually identifying these people and then flushing them out. That's
Yes.
actually an easy bit because usually, if you have a strong culture in house, like the bad elements, these are the bad apples, usually are flushed out. And that's actually what happened at Tide. Like we never struggled to actually, um, you know, let somebody go, or we never had to let somebody go because usually they realize Tide is not a good fit for them. And usually they leave. And we're talking about like less than a handful of people
Yeah, got it.
from the
Of
years
course.
in my
Yeah.
team. Um, then while hiring is really important, obviously when the team is small, I could do it myself, right? So it was easy. Like, if I wanted to hire, like going from 2 people to engineers, which was in the beginning in-house, to 5, okay, I could spend the time and actually manage to
Right.
hire these people. Once we started scaling above 50 and above 100, though, that became tricky because we needed to have a hiring team. And that hiring team needed to be at the same time like hired as well with a culture fit.
Correct.
There was a time, I think there was a couple of quarters where I was interviewing like 60, 70, 80% of my time, like literally meeting everyone.
But that's
That's
actually very important also. I feel like bringing the right people in and just having the calls, right calls with them is very, very critical. So for any engineering leader, I would say this could be a top priority. They can't really ignore it. What do you think?
So it depends on the level. Obviously, you can't expect at a company of 1,500 people, like somebody at the CTO level or VP level to actually interview every single one of them. But what I'm trying to say is like you build an extension around you, you build a team around you, which I wanted to do. Like from the very early days, I hired my current head of mobile and director of web, who are now head of mobile and director of web. Back then they were lead iOS and lead web
Yeah,
engineers.
got it.
And I hired them, and together we actually managed to scale Tide. It was like extending my philosophy, my values. Like I managed, when we talk about culture fit, I don't try to hire people who are identical to me. I try to hire people who actually have the same values, core values,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least, right? So these people then, by working together with me, they understand what we need to do. So we did it together. And then these people, they brought other people, and we
Yeah.
expanded. And this is how we managed to scale really, really fast. But there was a time where I was actually doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, I think that's a transition time, the inflection time where you really need to figure out the process and you are doing the
Yeah.
work. So
And it's a
I,
breaking point. It's a breaking point.
I
Like when
think,
then you actually, everything becomes very easy. But
yeah.
I think it was from January 2019 until probably, I'm going to say, Q3 2019, I was struggling. Like there was a lot of hiring.
Got it. Well, that's on the hiring part. There must have been technical challenges also. I'm sure when you were a small team, you need to really build that MVP, get that product market fit, and you're just building, you're not really, really caring about the technical debt. But when it comes to scaling after a point, which Tide, of course, did you experience any pains of the past, past mistakes?
Yeah, definitely. For the first 5 years, we're trying to improve the platform, the iOS and Android native platform. I was accountable for both of them. So, had all these initiatives every quarter trying to improve, refactor. I think we had at some point in 2018, we had an initiative called architectural factoring. So we wanted to change the architecture, which we did. We went to a modular architecture. So every year there was a lot of work around trying to improve and preparing for the next phase of scaling. So that scaling at the company level brought a lot of challenges within a team level, but also at the product level, because it's one thing having 5 engineers working in a code base than having 50, which we have now working at the same code base, right? So the challenges are very different. So it was again a constant challenge trying to improve how we do things, trying to optimize, and then especially on mobile, it was critical because we are mobile first. We took a decision to move to Flutter because it was promising and it actually paid back. So that was another big challenge when we actually had to transition our whole mobile stack to Flutter, while at the same time retain the people, like the really, really strong iOS and Android developers we had, upskill them to Flutter,
Yeah.
and then also hire more Flutter engineers because we wanted to also scale the team. So it was like it's like a train moving, and then you trying to change all the parts in it. But we managed to do it like really, really successfully.
During this whole time when the scale up was happening, how much time do you think you were coding after the initial days?
Coding. Okay, I have to admit I'm not coding now at Tide. I'm going outside Tide. I'm doing my own things outside Tide, but within Tide I don't code anymore. I don't have the time to actually code,
Okay.
or I don't think people want me to code anymore. You have
Right. That's what I just wanted to understand. When you're really scaling at that moment, if you're occupied with hiring, planning the tech strategy,
yeah.
making sure things are falling right, people are getting upskilled, you really don't get the time to do it. But is it okay to not code at that time and depend on the complete team to make sure things are falling in line? Or how do you exactly do it?
So I think it depends on the person, but I'd be very skeptical if I see like somebody at the CTO level at a company or a VP level or even a director level at the size that we are now, and they're actually coding.
Yeah, of
That's
course. At this size, I'm sure this is
yeah.
the perception. But while you were
Getting done, something is not getting done
yeah,
because I know, by experience, I know that there's a lot of things that you need to do that can keep you occupied like for a long time. And I'm actually very busy now, so I can see it myself. But it
makes
may be a case where somebody wants to code, right? It's good if they manage to
makes sense.
balance it. I don't see a problem. I did phased out from coding in around 2020, 2019, 2020. I stopped because that's when I had to do all the hiring.
So talking about this transition to Flutter, this was definitely a big change. But on day-to-day basis, such kind of big or small tech changes, new tools, new frameworks keep coming into picture, and you need them. Do you follow a standard framework or a process while evaluating the frameworks, the tools, the new technologies that you want to implement?
Yes. So technology keeps evolving, right? So there's things that we can experiment, and there are other things that obviously are much trickier to experiment, like changing your tech stack every year. Obviously, doesn't make sense. So it needs to be like very well thought. Um, and that's what we did. Like we didn't just woke up one day and said, "Let's move to Flutter." Obviously, we had a thought process behind it, evaluation process before we end up to the decision.
Yeah.
So it depends on the scale of what you're trying to do. I guess the decision is easier, right? If it's just a tool that you want to evaluate, then you can do a POC. You can see if it meets your demand, like your requirements. And then obviously cost is one of them. Everybody's trying to cut down on cost now. Everybody's like trying to do that. So that's one thing. You evaluate based on the 3, 4, 5 criteria you have, and then you make a decision. I don't want to overcomplicate it because it's not complicated. But reality says that it is complicated because then you have all the politics that come with it, especially when you're talking about engineers.
Yeah.
Because, everybody, like an engineer, it's a classic phrase, like we can build it. We can build that tool. Why
Yeah.
we can build it? And I'm actually facing these discussions, like even today, with some of our engineers, like when they think we can build tools, which I get, right? Because we are engineers, we can build everything, obviously, but we don't want to build. We want to build whatever makes sense for Thai, and then everything else we need to buy.
Right.
So the decision to buy comes with research. We're never gonna go full without researching, like without doing due diligence. without actually comparing technologies, and tools. Even with Flutter, we did compare technologies before we actually chose Flutter. We did look at Kotlin multi-platform and what was the other one? And native. We decided like whether we need to stick with native. So we compared these three and made a decision.
Perfect. But what was the one of the most or one or two important criterias to decide, okay, Flutter is something that fits? Like one is, of course, the scale that you want to move ahead. But apart from that, did you look at some other critical pointers also?
Yeah, so we had three. Everything was framed around three objectives that we had at the time. One of
Okay,
them was actually lead time. We wanted to be able to optimize our lead time to market, right?
makes sense. Makes sense.
In that, between native, obviously, and Kotlin multi-platform native, like obviously hypothesis, which I'm going to tell you how it turned out. The hypothesis was that Flutter will outperform the other two, and in
Okay,
fact, we have proved it out that we can build much faster. Definitely from native because we only need one team, we don't need two teams, so it's definitely faster. But
okay,
also from Kotlin multi-platform, like Flutter, literally you build once and deploy twice. I didn't believe it before, but actually it is possible. The second one was actually economies at scale didn't work. So when we actually wanted to scale that much, like the whole tide, we needed to hire like probably, I don't know, another double the mobile engineers we have now. So it didn't make sense at me at that point to have this big a team. So based on the premise that build once, deploy twice, then we said, okay, even if that's not the case, maybe you can optimize your engineering capacity by, I don't know, 33%. Actually, we managed to optimize it by, we managed to have it. That we didn't have people. Obviously, we managed the demand. We have the demand, right? We're still hiring people,
correct.
but we managed to request half people that we needed. And the third one is actually having feature parity between the platforms, like Android and iOS. Well, historically, we had features that were only deployed on Android or vice versa on iOS. Now with Flutter, everything is in bar because we built again once, deployed twice. So
Correct.
when we did the original research, we focused on the three. We gathered the data that we needed from the Google team, from other teams, and then we made the decision.
That's really, really insightful. And like scaling always comes up with different kind of challenges. And apart from handling this tech debt, technology, hiring, then the challenge of building the right culture also comes in, right? When you're scaling, of course, you did the right hire, you tried to find the right fit. But let's say after that, there is something that you're doing to actually nurture the team, reinforce the culture. So, how do you do that at time? Or how, in general, your practices to ensure the great culture at scale?
Yeah. So culture has two sides of it. The visible part of it, which is basically the office, the people, dress codes, all that stuff, some behaviors, right? And then there's all the invisible stuff, which is, all the rules you have, the unwritten rules, things that they're not necessarily seen. And it's hidden, right? So your job is actually to surface the good behaviors as well that people don't necessarily see. And you can do this with different ways. Like, feedback is one of them, like providing feedback, celebrating like the good behaviors, the ones you want to see, um, listening to the employees, right? Whatever you're telling you, because you don't know better. You need to listen so you can improve. So this creates a culture, like a positive and strong culture that has psychological safety, and then they can be adaptive as well. And more importantly, you need to lead by example. You can't just I can't ask
Yeah,
you to behave a certain way if I don't behave that way, right? And usually when I talk about it, I close this in presentation. I close with that because this is the most important thing. Like leaders need to actually be at the top of the culture. They can't promote a culture that they're not part of it.
absolutely. When you talk about the psychological safety and taking care of the team, building the right culture, when all this is in place, I think teams are really motivated, like innately to work on things, be more creative, and deliver better. But at the same time, I always feel that when you scale, you lose that visibility in the team to understand if teams are really performing or not. Of course, culture is one part, but you usually need to understand how efficient they are, and you of course have to take care of the overall. developer experience also in the team so that they can move fast. You have to create that environment. So how do you ensure that they are efficient, they are performing right? How do you exactly do that?
So I'm not going to talk about developer productivity because actually you can't measure it. McKinsey says they can, but I don't think you can. Like we established now from Ken Beck and the pragmatic engineer that actually we shouldn't talk about developer productivity, but we do know we do have DORA metrics, like industry
Yeah.
standard DORA metrics, which the grades they cover one part of it because you can still be great at DORA metrics and your team is burned out. So that's not enough. So now we looking into adding few more things that have to do with developer experience. Obviously, we also have the product metrics, like for our products, the metrics. So all of them combined, they give you like a really good idea about your product engineering teams, how agile they are, how the business agility, how happy they are, developer experience, and also are we building the right products, like with the product manager. So I think that's all of them together. You can't look at them in isolation anymore. You need to look at them like holistically if you want to have a really good health picture.
Right, of course. So can we just deep dive a little bit into this? Like, let's start with developer experience. What exactly would you try to gauge when you are trying to understand the experience of developer?
So I think that the interpretation of what is a good metric from developer experience is different. I think Space, there's a new framework called Space, which I think does a really good job. So I have people in the team now looking at this, but ultimately developer experience is self-explanatory, right? It's about how happy and productive are your developers, like how happy actually mostly,
Yeah.
and if they are, that can translate to being productive as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if you have unhappy people, they're not going to be productive. We know that. So I don't wanna, I haven't looked at it myself. Like I know about Space, but
Sure.
I'm looking at the outcome that I want to achieve. And for me, any metrics you have on the developer experience has to be about the actual people themselves. It's not about the product anymore. It's not about definitely about your releases or your deployments. It's actually about the people. Um, Now, what makes an engineer happy? God knows. Like who knows what makes engineers happy? Way bunch of people. Yeah.
No, of course, but I think with this approach or this intention of keeping them happy, you will be able to understand that and also maybe work on things that you
Yeah.
really want to do for them. So it totally makes sense.
Maybe I'm using happy as an umbrella because happy, it's like I said, like I try to imply basically by saying that what engineers need, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
happy for whatever makes you happy is probably different than what makes me happy. So I think it's not just simple as saying like, a simple questionnaire like, are you happy or not? Like, or how happy you are. Like, because we do that as well, right? At
Right, right.
the pulse.
Yep, yep, we do
Like
that.
a week and it gives you, it's beyond that. It's not just that. So I don't want people to take out that, oh, if we ask people if they're happy, that's DevX metrics. No, there's a good framework phase. They do a lot of work. I'm just simplifying things.
No, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. So yeah, perfect. I think that answers a lot about how you are leading teams at SaaStr. So I am totally in line with this thought. But coming to this DORA metrics piece, like those four metrics or maybe a few more metrics which you might want to look into to understand how teams are doing. Do you do that at your organization?
Yeah, so we do. Not personally me, but we have a team looking at DORA metrics now. We have one of the directors of engineering who's actually looking at holistically as an initiative, like how to get to the next level. Um, yeah, we do.
Oh, oh. So it's kind of critical for like large scale organization at this scale. You think it is important, or is it like
It's critical if you want to improve. If any company at any size needs or wants to improve, they need to know how they perform, right? At least as a company. Forget about developer experience, but at least as a
right?
company, they need to
You
understand
need to
how to
know.
perform. Usually, companies have the KPIs, like the business side of the company has the KPIs, like growth, how many users they acquired, ARR, like annual recurring revenue. But then, for a product engineering company, for a tech company, I think it is important to understand how
These people are doing.
how basically are you working, like are
Yeah,
you
yeah. So I think you touched on a very good point here, where success of these tech teams cannot really be defined with just the metrics. I think there is more to it, right? You have to like probably build some alignment with the business and help them improve. So how do you do that at
I mean, think of it this way as an example, right? I can have like a perfect engineering team and they're building all the wrong products that nobody uses. But then when you look at DORA metrics, all four of them, they're great. Like, great. They deploy like multiple times a day, no bugs, no defects in production, no hot fixes. We respond really fast when we do find one, but we keep building the wrong products nobody uses. So are we successful as a company? No.
that?
Are we successful as engineering? I'd say no, because engineering and product doesn't separate. Like they go together.
They're together. Yeah.
Right? You can't, like, that's why we call technical debt. We don't call it technical debt at that. We call it product debt because it's
Okay.
one. It's one product we have. We don't have a technology and then a product. Product is one. So at Tide, work together as one team, like work together with product, together with our business stakeholders, which, I'm considered one of them as well, like because we're part of the business. Again, business is one, right? It's not separate. It's not us and them. And I think we work together. We have the OKRs, company OKRs, quarterly OKRs, and then these OKRs that translate to initiatives and outcomes we want to achieve. And then, obviously the OKRs and outcomes. And then we go and deliver them.
Great. Great, Giorgos. I think that was really amazing, really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing so many insights and hands-on experience. Any parting advice for our audience?
Advice. I'm not really good at advice. Actually, I'm not bad. Actually, I'd say I go back to, especially for new people, right? Like less experienced people. I don't want to call them juniors or anything because it's about experience, right? I'd say do not be afraid to try like new technologies. You'll be surprised of what you can actually see there. Don't be dogmatic. Like one thing that I've learned early in my life, and actually I paid the price for it, is like you should not be dogmatic. I actually moved to, like, so that's a funny story. I'm going to close with this. I was actually a hardcore Flash and Flex developer back in 2009. Like I was doing a lot of Flex, a lot of ActionScript 3, and I hated Apple because obviously didn't allow Flash to go into the iPhone, like back then. And then in 2010, January or February 2010, Steve Jobs released this nice email, letter, whatever, that killed Flash basically. I decided to drop Flash and start learning iOS. So, don't be dogmatic because, you limit your options. So always continuously improve and always learn new things. That's the advice.
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Cool.
And
Okay, COVID.
yeah, see you. See you. Thank
Really,
you.
really nice chatting with you.
Same here. Same here. Thank you.